Hi, it's Sarah here from Crafting and Stamping, and I'm back with a set of quick tips for you today. And this is about getting some straight stamping. One of my lovely viewers got in touch with me to say that I tend to make things look very easy. And that's because I've been stamping for so very many years. So I just wanted to share a few tips today for how to get straight stamping, because whilst I am used to doing it, I stamp regularly, it comes fairly easy to me now after so many years of stamping. I wanted to share some of the things that I probably take for granted. Now today I'm just going to give some general tips no matter which sort of stamps you're using. I'm also going to come back and do videos on different days for stamping with photopolymer stamps and stamping with cling mount stamps, because there's a few other little tips and tricks that you can use with both of those. So today the tips are very general and work for either sort of stamp. And the first one is practice. Like I say, the reason that I can stamp fairly confidently, and I do still mess up, but I get results, I would say at least 9 times out of 10, is because I've been doing this for so many years. So practice, and I would suggest that you practice onto some grid paper or some lined paper. And when I say practice, I don't mean that you've got to practice every day or anything like that. I just mean have a practice stamp before you stamp on the work that matters. So I'm just going to demonstrate with this. Let's just, because I've got another tip that I want to share in a minute, but let's just ink this up and I'll show you what I mean. So if I'm wanting to stamp on this piece here, then it's a good idea for me to just have a practice stamp onto my grid paper or some lined paper, whatever works for you. And that way you can see, you know, is the text of the stamp something that needs you to get it really straight? Because this has got a slightly, you know, it's got a cursive font, it's not capitals, it's not entirely straight, it's a little bit wiggly. So it's actually got a little bit more leeway in it. So I've practiced that, I can see how that stamps. So that's one tip, practice onto grid or lined paper. And let's have a little look at some others. So one of the things is, if you can stand, and I do this all the time, I perhaps don't always say that I'm doing it, but at the moment I am stood up over my stamp. When I need to get it straight, I stand over the stamp so that I can see where it's going to stamp for me. So if you can, stand up and look over your work so that you can see exactly where you're stamping. Now, another tip is to use the right size block. This is partly about placing the stamp on straight. The straighter you can get your stamp on the block, the easier it is for your eye to see whether you are stamping straight or not. If I go with this block and put this stamp on, and at the moment I'm sat down, so I don't even, again, if I stand up and put it on the block, I can get it straighter. Now, if I am using a big block, I can position it and I can actually use the grid paper in the background to see whether or not it's straight. But much better is if you use the right size block to start with. There's other reasons for that as well, which we'll go into another day. But this, like I say, if you line your block up with your grid paper or your lined paper, that can help. And like I say, getting your stamp straight on the block to start with makes it much easier. If, for example, I was to put this on at a bit of an angle like that, then I've got to be twisting that, and it doesn't feel natural. It's not assisting your stamping. So pop it onto the block straight, use the smallest block that is suitable. And now the last sort of tip that I've got for you today, let's pop that back on, is when you're stamping, I recommend that you hover low over your work so that you can see where you're going to be. If you're up here, by the time you've got down here, you can have gone one way or another. So when you're getting ready to stamp, hover low over your work and then confidently stamp down, and you will get a straighter image for it, a straighter sentiment, straighter image, whatever it is that you're working with. So those are my quick tips for today for general stamping. So practice onto grid paper, onto lined paper. A lot of us have notebooks that you could use for just practicing. And like I say, when I say practice, just practice once or twice before you stamp onto the work that matters. You don't want to spoil something that you've laboured over by stamping onto it and getting it wrong. So practice first. If you can, stand over the work so that you can see where you're stamping, whether it's photopolymer or cling, it still helps to be able to be stood up and see where your stamp is going to land. Place your stamp roughly, get it fairly straight. I wouldn't say, spend ages getting it exactly straight, but you want it fairly straight rather than at an angle, because it just helps make things quicker and easier when you're stamping. And hover low onto the work. Don't hold the stamp up here and then come down and expect it to land straight onto the card. So I hope that has helped. Like I say, I'm going to be back with specific tips for both the photopolymer and our cling mount stamps, the red rubber stamps, at a later date. Please subscribe to my channel below to see a quick tip like this every Friday and a quick card every Monday. Thanks for stopping by.